At 6:15 on a cold Saturday morning, a tiny 9-year-old girl with a swollen purple eye and dried blood on her lower lip pushed open the heavy door of the rusty Anchor diner, walked straight up to a table full of 15 bearded, leather-clad bikers from the Road Guardians Motorcycle Club, and in a trembling voice asked the question that would change hundreds of lives forever. "Please, will one of you be my dad, just for today?" The diner smelled of strong coffee, sizzling bacon, and engine oil that never quite washed out of leather jackets. The Road Guardians had claimed the same corner booth every Saturday for the past 12 years. They were big men, some tattooed from neck to knuckles, others with gray beards that reached their chests. Yet they were the first to show up when floods hit the county, the first to deliver truckloads of toys to orphanages at Christmas, the first to escort funeral processions for fallen veterans when no one else would ride in the rain. Ryan "Bear" Callahan, the club president, 54 years old, former Marine, silver-haired with a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, was pouring coffee when the door chimed. Every head turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. The little girl, barely 4 feet tall, stood frozen just inside the door. Her right eye was bright hazel and full of fear, but the left was swollen completely shut. A dark ring of bruises circled her thin neck like fingerprints. Her denim jacket was 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled up, and there was a rip at the shoulder that looked fresh. She scanned the room, spotted the patches on their vests, the winged skull with the words "Road Guardians MC," and walked straight toward them. Her sneakers squeaked on the linoleum floor. When she reached their table, she had to stand on tiptoe to be seen over the edge. "Excuse me," she whispered, voice cracking. "Are you the motorcycle men who help people?" Bear set his mug down slowly. The other men, Jax, Reaper, Doc, Tiny, and 10 more, leaned forward almost in unison. "We are, sweetheart," Bear said, his deep voice softening in a way the others rarely heard. "What's your name?" "Emma Thompson. I'm 9. I go to Westfield Elementary." She swallowed hard. "Today is Family Career Day. All the kids are bringing their moms or dads to talk about what they do. My mom works double shifts at the hospital and my stepdad," her good eye filled with tears, "he hurt me again last night. I broke a plate by accident. He said I was worthless and threw me against the wall." The words spilled out like water from a broken dam. The diner went quieter than a church. Kelly, the waitress who had served these men for years, froze with a pot of coffee in her hand. Emma's tiny hands clenched at her sides. "I heard at school that you guys protect kids. I thought if one of you came with me today, maybe he'd be scared and stop. Please, will one of you be my dad just for today?" Bear felt something crack open inside his chest, an old wound he thought had scarred over years ago. Jax, sitting beside him, gripped his coffee mug so hard his knuckles went white. He had lost a little sister to a monster like that when he was 12. Doc, the club's medic, a former army field surgeon, stared at the bruises on Emma's neck and looked like he might be sick. Bear slid out of the booth and knelt in front of her, bringing his 6'4" frame down to her level. His leather vest creaked. "Emma," he said gently, "look at me." She did, tears spilling down her cheek. "You are not worthless. You are the bravest little girl I've ever met. And yes, we'll be there, all of us." Her good eye widened. All of you?" Bear smiled, the kind of smile that reached his eyes for the first time in months. "Every single one who can ride." Right then, in the middle of this heart-wrenching moment, if stories like this one move you, if you believe real kindness still exists in unexpected places, pause for a second, hit that like button, and subscribe to Road Motorcycle Diaries. We share true stories of courage, family, and humanity every week. Join the family. Kelly appeared with a plate of chocolate chip pancakes and a glass of orange juice. "On the house, honey," she said, voice thick. Emma sat at the counter, eating slowly, while the men formed a tight circle in the corner. Phones came out. Voices were low, urgent. "We're not just showing up for a school event," Bear said. "We're sending a message. This little girl just walked into a room full of strangers and asked for help. We answer. We all answer." By the time Emma finished her pancakes, Bear had already made 6 calls. Chapters from 3 neighboring counties were mobilizing. Men were calling out of work, wives were packing extra helmets, brothers were firing up bikes that hadn't seen daylight in weeks. Bear knelt beside Emma again. "We're taking you to the hospital first, okay? We need a doctor to look at those injuries." Emma nodded, trusting him completely now. As they walked out into the dawn light, 50 motorcycles would soon roar to life for one little girl who dared to ask for help. But what none of them knew yet was just how big this day was about to become. As the sun crept higher over the frost-covered highways, Ryan Bear Callahan stood in the parking lot of the Rusty Anchor Diner with his phone pressed to his ear, his deep voice carrying a command that hadn't been heard since his Marine days. "Every chapter within 100 miles. Drop everything. We ride for a little girl who just asked us to be her family." The gravel crunched under heavy boots as the 15 original road guardians formed a tight circle around Bear. The cold morning air smelled of diesel and determination. Emma sat inside on a stool, swinging her legs nervously while Kelly kept refilling her orange juice. But through the window, she could see the men talking urgently, hands gesturing, heads nodding. Jax Reaper Moreno, the club's sergeant-at-arms, 48 years old with a shaved head and a teardrop tattoo under his left eye from a life he'd left behind, was already on his second call. "Yeah, brother, it's real. 9-year-old kid walked in here looking like she'd been in a fight with a grown man and lost. Bruises on her neck like someone tried to choke the life out of her. She asked us to be her dad for the day. We're not letting her down." On the other end of the line, the president of the North County chapter, a man named Hawk, went silent for 3 full seconds. "How many do we need?" he finally asked. "All of you," Reaper replied. "As many as can ride. This isn't just a school visit. This is a statement." Within minutes, the word was spreading like wildfire through encrypted group chats and old-school phone trees that the club still used. Men who hadn't spoken in years were texting back, "On my way." Wives were being told not to wait up. One member, a truck driver named Big Mike, pulled his rig over on I-70, called his dispatcher, claimed a family emergency, and fired up his Harley he kept in the trailer for exactly these kinds of moments. Back at the diner, Bear knelt beside Emma again. Her good eye kept darting to the window where more bikes were already pulling in, members who lived nearby and had gotten the first wave of texts. "Emma," Bear said softly, "we're going to take you to the hospital now. We need pictures and a doctor's report so the police can do their job. Then we're all going to your school together. Sound okay?" She nodded, but her lower lip trembled. "Will my mum be mad that I told?" Bear's heart twisted. "Your mum loves you more than anything. She's going to be relieved someone finally stepped in, I promise." He dialed the number Emma gave him for her mother, Sarah Thompson. It rang 4 times before a tired, hesitant voice answered. "Hello? Mrs. Thompson, my name is Ryan Callahan. I'm with the Road Guardians Motorcycle Club. Your daughter Emma is here with us at the Rusty Anchor Diner off Highway 42. She's safe, but she's hurt. She told us what her stepfather did." There was a sharp intake of breath, then a sound like something breaking, a coffee mug hitting the floor perhaps. "Oh God, I knew, I suspected." She kept making excuses, hiding under long sleeves even when it was warm. "I work nights at the factory. I'm barely home. I thought if I just worked harder, saved more, we could leave." "Sarah," Bear cut in gently but firmly, "this isn't your fault. Men like that, they're good at hiding who they really are until it's too late. But it stops today. We're taking Emma to St. Mary's Hospital right now to get her checked out. Can you meet us there?" "I'm on my way," Sarah sobbed. "Tell her I love her. Tell her I'm sorry." Bear handed the phone to Emma so she could hear her mum's voice herself. Tears rolled down both their cheeks as they spoke for the first time in what felt like honest years. Doc, the club's medic, a wiry 62-year-old with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, examined Emma as best he could in the diner's back room. He shone a small flashlight into her good eye, gently pressed around the swollen one, and checked her ribs. Every wince she made felt like a knife in his gut. "Concussion likely," he muttered to Bear. "Possible cracked ribs, those neck bruises, strangulation attempt. We need x-rays and a full report." By 7:30 a.m., 37 bikes were lined up in the parking lot, engines idling like a pride of lions ready to roar. More were en route. Bear lifted Emma gently onto the front of his Harley, wrapping her in an oversized club jacket that swallowed her whole. She clung to him as they rolled out, a convoy that stretched half a mile long. At St. Mary's ER, nurses froze when the automatic doors slid open, and 15 leather-clad bikers walked in, carrying a bruised little girl. But Bear's calm explanation and Emma's quiet trust in him melted the tension. Sarah arrived 20 minutes later, running through the doors in her factory uniform, hair unbrushed, face streaked with tears. She collapsed beside Emma's bed, holding her daughter like she might disappear. The doctor's examination confirmed everyone's worst fears. 2 cracked ribs, severe bruising, a mild concussion, and clear evidence of strangulation. The bruises on her neck were in the perfect shape of adult fingers. As the doctor handed over the official report, she looked at Bear. "You people saved this child's life today. Another night like last night." Bear nodded grimly. Reaper was already on the phone with a detective he knew, a cop who rode with them on charity runs. "We've got documentation," he said. "Send units to the house. Name's Kyle Ramsey. He's about to have a very bad morning." By 9 a.m., police were knocking on the door of a modest ranch house on Elm Street. Kyle Ramsey, hungover and confused, opened the door to find officers waiting with an arrest warrant. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, the parking lot was filling with motorcycles. Word had reached 60 riders now. They stood in silent formation, helmets in hand, waiting for Bear's signal. Emma, bandaged and wearing a hospital gown that read, "Brave Little Warrior," looked up at Bear with her one good eye. "Are they all really coming for me?" Bear smiled down at her. "Every last one, kiddo. Today, you've got the biggest family in the state." But as they prepared to ride to Westfield Elementary, none of them could have predicted what would happen when 60 bikers walked into a school gymnasium full of parents and children, or the chain of events that would start with one small boy raising his hand. At exactly 9:42 a.m., the quiet streets of Westfield turned into a symphony of thunder as 60 Harley-Davidson motorcycles rolled into the Lincoln Elementary School parking lot in perfect formation, their engines growling in unison before cutting off one by one, a silence that somehow felt even louder than the roar that came before it. The asphalt trembled, windows rattled in the school building. Children pressed their faces against classroom windows, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and wonder. Teachers whispered frantically in hallways. Principal Elena Rodriguez stepped out onto the front steps, phone in hand, unsure whether to call the police or prepare for an evacuation. Then they saw her, little Emma Thompson, perched on the front of Bear's massive black Harley, wearing an oversized leather jacket with the Road Guardian's patch on the back, her tiny hand gripping Bear's arm. Her swollen eye was covered with a fresh bandage from the hospital, but her good eye sparkled with something new, hope. One by one, the riders dismounted, 60 men and women, some with gray beards down to their chests, others with arms covered in tattoos, a few women with braided hair and fierce expressions lined up in perfect rows. They removed their helmets simultaneously, revealing faces weathered by sun and wind, but softened now by purpose. Bear lifted Emma down gently, as if she were made of glass. She took his hand, and together they led the procession toward the school entrance, 60 bikers walking behind them like a protective honor guard. Principal Rodriguez met them at the door. She was a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, known for running a tight ship. "Mr. Callahan," she asked, reading the name on his vest. Can you explain what exactly is happening here?" "Career day, ma'am," Bear replied calmly, his deep voice carrying authority without aggression. "Emma invited us. She didn't think anyone would show up for her today. We're here to prove her wrong." The principal's eyes shifted to Emma, the quiet girl from Mrs. Harlow's 4th grade class, who always sat in the back, who came to school with too many accidents, who had missed 12 days already this year. She saw the bandage, the careful way Emma held her ribs, the bruises peeking out from under her sleeve, and then she looked at the army of bikers standing silently behind them, men and women who had dropped everything on a Saturday morning to be here. "No," Principal Rodriguez said softly, her voice catching. "No problem at all. Welcome to Westfield Elementary." Inside the gymnasium, the atmosphere was festive, or it had been. Tables were set up around the perimeter, a firefighter in full gear, a pediatric nurse with anatomical models, a software engineer with a robot demonstration, a baker with fresh cookies for the kids. Parents and business casual chatted politely. Then the doors opened. 60 bikers walked in. The room went dead silent. A mother gasped and pulled her child closer. A father stood up halfway, ready to intervene. The firefighter's hand instinctively went to his radio. Children froze mid-bite of cookies. Emma clung tighter to Bear's hand. "They're scared of you," she whispered. Bear knelt down. "That's okay, kiddo. Sometimes people are scared of what they don't understand. Watch this." He walked to the center of the gym, the bikers fanning out behind him in a protective semicircle around Emma. "Good morning, everyone," Bear said, his voice filling the space without a microphone. "My name is Ryan Callahan. Most people call me Bear. We're the Road Guardians Motorcycle Club. We're here because one very brave little girl asked for our help." He gestured to Emma. "Emma here has had a tough time lately, but today she gets to show off her family, and today her family is a little bigger than most." Mrs. Harlow, the 4th grade teacher, a kind woman who had noticed Emma's absences but never quite connected the dots, felt tears spring to her eyes. She saw the hospital bracelet still on Emma's wrist, the way she favored her left side. What do you do?" one parent finally stammered, a lawyer in a tailored suit. Reaper stepped forward, his intimidating presence softened by a gentle smile. "We ride motorcycles. We fix them, we build them, but mostly we show up. When hurricanes hit the coast, we're there with trucks full of supplies. When a veteran dies alone, we ride in his funeral procession so he's never buried without honor. When kids need toys at Christmas and their parents can't afford it, we make sure those kids wake up to presents." Doc spoke next. "Some of us are mechanics, some truck drivers, some veterans. I was an army medic for 20 years. We've all got stories. But today's not about us. It's about Emma." A small hand went up in the back. A boy named Tyler, quiet like Emma, always wearing long sleeves even in warm weather. Mr. Bear," he asked, voice shaking, Do you help kids when their dads hurt them too?" The gym went colder than ice. Tyler's father, a burly man sitting beside him, turned red. "Tyler, sit down and be quiet." But Bear was already moving. He crossed the gym in 4 long strides and knelt in front of the boy. "Tyler," he said gently, "you never have to be quiet about that. Not ever again." Tyler's eyes filled with tears. "He gets mad when he drinks. Last week he broke my arm. Mom said we fell down the stairs." His mother, pale and trembling, looked like she might faint. Within seconds, 10 bikers had formed a wall between Tyler's family and his father. Not threatening, just present, unmovable. "Ma'am," said Lena, one of the club's female members, a tough woman with a sleeve of roses tattooed on her arm. "We have safe places, lawyers who work pro bono, people who will help you leave today if that's what you want." Tyler's father stood up angrily. "This is none of your damn language," Bear said quietly, but with steel in his voice. "There are children here." The man looked around, at 60 bikers staring him down, at teachers now on phones calling authorities, at his wife crying silently. He stormed out. The gym was silent for a long moment. Then Principal Rodriguez stepped forward. "We're ending career day presentations early today," she announced, "but we're starting something new, something important." She looked at Bear. Can your club come back to talk to our staff, to help us see what we've been missing?" Bear nodded. "We'll be back, as often as you need." As the bikers began to file out, children approached hesitantly at first, then in a rush, asking to touch the motorcycles, wanting patches, asking questions. Emma stood in the middle of it all, surrounded by her new family, smiling for the first time in months. But this was only the beginning. What started as one little girl asking for a dad for one day was about to grow into something that would protect hundreds of children. And no one in that gymnasium could have guessed how far it would reach. In the days following that thunderous Saturday, the gymnasium of Westfield Elementary became ground zero for a change no one saw coming. A single act of courage from a bruised 9-year-old girl had cracked open doors that had stayed locked for far too long, and now the light was pouring in. Principal Elena Rodriguez couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Emma's bandaged face and Tyler's trembling hand raised in the air. She saw the parents who had looked away, the teachers who had noticed but didn't know what to do. On Monday morning, she called an emergency staff meeting. "I failed them," she admitted to her teachers, voice breaking. "We all did. We saw the signs, and we told ourselves it was none of our business, or that someone else would handle it. But those bikers, those men and women everyone crosses the street to avoid, they showed up. They didn't look away." Mrs. Harlow, Emma's teacher, sat with tears streaming down her face. "Emma used to draw pictures of her family," she whispered. "Always just her and her mom, never the stepdad. I thought she was shy. I should have asked." By noon, Principal Rodriguez was on the phone with Bear. "Mr. Callahan, Ryan, can you come back? We need help. We need to learn how to see." Bear didn't hesitate. "We'll be there tomorrow, and we're bringing people who've lived it." That Tuesday afternoon, 20 road guardians rolled into the school parking lot, this time quieter, engines off before they reached the gate out of respect. They filed into the auditorium, where every teacher, counselor, and staff member waited. Bear stood at the front with Emma's mom, Sarah, by his side. Sarah had filed a restraining order against Kyle the day after the arrest. She looked exhausted, but there was steel in her eyes now. "I blamed myself for years," Sarah told the room. "I thought if I just loved him enough, if I worked harder, if I was better, he'd change. But monsters don't change because you love them harder. They change when someone makes them stop." Reaper spoke next, his voice raw. "I was Emma once. My old man broke my arm when I was 7. Teachers saw the cast, heard the lies about falling off my bike. No one called anyone. By the time I was 12, I was in the system. Foster homes, running away, juvie. The club saved me when I had nothing left, gave me family, purpose." Lena, the tattooed woman who had comforted Tyler's mom, shared her story of escaping an abusive husband with 2 kids and no money. Doc talked about the medical red flags teachers could spot. One by one, the bikers opened veins they rarely showed the world. Then they unveiled Guardian Watch, a program they were creating on the spot. Mandatory training for staff on recognizing abuse, a direct hotline to the club for any child who needed help after hours, safe houses run by members' families, mentorship for kids in the system. "We're not social workers," Bear said. "We're not perfect, but we show up, and we don't quit." By the end of the week, Kyle Ramsey was in jail awaiting trial on multiple felony counts. Sarah and Emma had moved into a small apartment provided temporarily by the club. Emma came back to school with a new backpack covered in Road Guardians patches that the members had sewn on themselves. But the real change was just beginning. Word spread. A local news station picked up the story. Biker club steps in where system failed, saves children from abuse. The video of 60 motorcycles pulling into the school went viral. Messages poured in from across the state. Other schools wanting the training, other clubs wanting to replicate the program. Tyler and his mom were safe in a shelter, his father arrested after Guardian Watch tipped off authorities to prior incidents. 3 more children came forward that first month, quiet kids with long sleeves and too many excuses. Bear sat in the club's workshop late one night, cleaning tools while Emma watched from a stool, swinging her legs. "Can I learn to fix bikes?" she asked suddenly. Bear looked up, surprised. "You want to wrench? I want to be strong like you. So when I grow up, I can help kids too." He handed her a small wrench. "Start with this bolt. Turn it lefty-loosey, righty-tighty." She grinned, the first real, full grin since that morning in the diner. But across town, Child Protective Services caseworker Maria Lopez was drowning in files. She had 78 cases, twice the recommended load. When Bear called her about expanding Guardian Watch, she nearly cried. "I want to help every kid," she said. "But I'm one person. The system is broken." Bear's voice was steady. "Then we fix it together. People like us, we've been through the system. We know what's missing." Maria agreed to meet. Little did they know that meeting would lead to something that would eventually span multiple states and save thousands of lives. But first, they had to convince a room full of skeptics that bikers and bureaucrats could actually work together. In a crowded conference room at the county courthouse, 2 worlds that were never supposed to meet sat across from each other. 20 road guardians in leather vests and heavy boots on one side, and 15 social workers, CPS supervisors, and county officials in business attire on the other. Yet within minutes, the room felt less like a negotiation and more like a family meeting called to save their kids. Maria Lopez, the overworked CPS caseworker with dark circles under her eyes and a stack of files that never seemed to shrink, stood up first. She had been on the job for 14 years and had seen too many children slip through cracks that were more like canyons. "I get calls every day," she began, voice steady but tired. "Kids like Emma, like Tyler. I want to help them all, but I have 78 active cases. By the time I finish paperwork for one, 3 more come in. The system is drowning." Bear leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Then let us throw you a lifeline. We're not asking to replace you. We're asking to stand beside you. We've got manpower, safe houses, people who've been through the fire and came out the other side. We can be the muscle when you need someone picked up at 2 a.m. We can be the safe ride when a mom finally decides to leave." A county official, Mr. Hargrove, a man in a crisp suit who had initially opposed the meeting, shifted uncomfortably. "With all due respect, Mr. Callahan, your organization has a certain reputation. How do we know this isn't just publicity?" Reaper let out a low chuckle that held no humor. "Our reputation, yeah, we've earned some of it, but the part where we deliver semi-trucks of supplies after floods, the part where we escort abused women to shelters so their exes don't follow, that's the reputation we care about. You want references? Call any sheriff in a 100-mile radius. They know who shows up when the cameras aren't rolling." Maria slid a folder across the table. Photos of Emma's injuries, Tyler's broken arm x-ray, reports from 3 other children who'd come forward since the school event. These kids didn't wait for bureaucracy. They waited for someone to show up, and someone did. The room fell silent. Then, slowly, Hargrove nodded. "What exactly are you proposing?" Bear laid out the plan they had been building for weeks. Guardian Watch would become an official non-profit partner with CPS. Club members would go through background checks and training. They would provide emergency transport, temporary safe housing, mentorship programs, and after-hours support. In return, CPS would fast-track referrals and give them a seat at the table. "It's not about taking kids away," Bear said. "It's about breaking the cycle." A lot of us grew up in homes like the ones these kids are escaping. We know what it's like to feel invisible. We're not letting another generation go through that. Sarah Thompson, Emma's mom, who had been invited to speak, stood up. She was still healing, emotionally more than physically. "I was terrified to leave Kyle. I had no money, no plan, nowhere to go. The road guardians gave us a place to stay the first week. They helped me file paperwork, find a job with better hours. They didn't judge me for staying too long. They just showed up every day. One by one, others shared." Lena told of mentoring a teenage girl who had run away from an abusive foster placement. Doc spoke about teaching basic first aid to kids so they'd know when injuries needed real help. Even Big Mike, the truck driver, talked about hauling donated furniture to families starting over. By the end of the 2-hour meeting, hands were shaken, papers were signed, and Guardian Watch was officially born. 3 months later, the clubhouse had been transformed. The back warehouse became The Nest, a bright, welcoming space with bunk beds, a kitchen, toys and books. The first weekend it opened, 12 children arrived, some for a few hours of respite, others for longer stays while placements were found. Emma was there every Saturday, helping younger kids with homework, showing them how to turn a wrench on an old bike engine Bear had set up as a teaching tool. One afternoon, a new boy arrived. 11-year-old Marcus, small for his age, with fresh cigarette burns on his arms. He wouldn't speak to anyone. Emma sat beside him quietly for an hour, not pushing, just being there. Finally, he whispered, "Do they really help? Or do they just say that?" Emma rolled up her sleeve, showing the faint scars from her own bruises. "They helped me. I asked them to be my dad for one day. They've been my family ever since." Marcus looked up at the bikers working in the shop, big, rough men laughing as they fixed bikes, women bringing in trays of sandwiches. For the first time, he smiled. Word continued to spread. Other motorcycle clubs reached out, wanting to start chapters of Guardian Watch in their areas. Schools in neighboring districts requested training. The local news ran follow-ups, from one little girl's plea to a statewide network of protection. But the real magic happened in the quiet moments, like when Bear found Emma asleep on a couch in the nest, curled up with a book about motorcycles, or when Sarah called to say she had gotten a promotion and was saving for their own house. Yet even as Guardian Watch grew, challenges loomed. Not everyone welcomed the idea of bikers involved in child welfare. Funding was scarce, and some cases hit harder than others. One in particular that would test everything they had built and force them to confront the limits of even the strongest family. When the call came in at 2:17 a.m., on a rainy Thursday night, Bear was wrenching on an old panhead in the clubhouse garage, the only light coming from a single hanging bulb and the glow of his cigarette. Then his phone buzzed with the Guardian Watch emergency tone, and within seconds, he knew this one would push them all to their breaking point. The voice on the other end was Maria Lopez, sounding more exhausted than ever. "Bear, we've got a bad one. 3 kids, ages 4, 7, and 10. Mom's in the hospital after the father put her in ICU. He's barricaded in the house with the children and a gun. Police are on scene, but he's threatening to hurt them if anyone comes closer." The oldest, Sophia, managed to text a friend who called us. She said if we don't come, no one will save them. Bear's blood ran cold. He had seen standoffs before, in war zones in his old life, but never with children in the crossfire. "How long do we have?" "SWAT's en route, but they're 40 minutes out. He's drunk, escalating. Sophia says he's waving the gun around, screaming about not letting anyone take his kids." Bear was already moving. "We're closer. 15 minutes. Tell the officers on scene we're coming. Non-threatening." White flag run. We've talked down worse. He hit the club's emergency group chat. All hands, life or death. Roll now. Engines roared to life in driveways across 3 counties. Men and women who had been asleep bolted upright, threw on cuts, kissed spouses goodbye, and hit the wet roads. Reaper was there in 8 minutes. Lena in 10. Doc grabbed his old medic kit. Even members who had taken the night off for family obligations dropped everything. Bear rode lead, rain lashing his face, mind racing. They weren't armed like SWAT. No rifles, no vests. Just leather, heart, and a reputation that sometimes opened doors bullets couldn't. They arrived to a nightmare scene. Blue and red lights flashing off wet pavement, police cruisers forming a perimeter, officers with weapons drawn, a small duplex at the end of a dead-end street, screams echoing from inside. The lead officer approached Bear cautiously. "You the bikers CPS called about?" Bear nodded, hands visible. "Ryan Callahan. We're here to help talk him down. We've got members who know this guy. Worked with him years ago before he fell off. Let us try." The officer hesitated, then nodded. "No weapons, no sudden moves. We've got snipers if it goes south." Bear, Reaper, and Lena walked forward slowly, hands raised, a white shop rag tied to Bear's antenna as a makeshift flag. "Tommy!" Bear shouted toward the house. "It's Bear Callahan! We worked that construction site together back in '09, remember? You pulled me out when that scaffold collapsed. I owe you, brother. Let's talk." A window cracked open. Tommy Ruiz, wild-eyed, unshaven, gun in one hand, peered out. "Stay back. They're trying to take my kids." "No one's taking your kids tonight, Tommy," Bear called calmly. "Your wife's hurt bad. She's asking for the children. Let them come out so they can go to her. You don't want them seeing this." Inside, 10-year-old Sophia clutched her little brothers, whispering, "The bikers are here, like in the stories at school." Reaper stepped forward slightly. "Tommy, man, I know what anger feels like. I've been where you are, lost everything, thought the world was against me. But those kids, they're the only good thing left. Don't make them lose you forever." The minutes stretched like hours. Rain soaked through their cuts. Officers watched tensely. Finally, a small voice from inside. "Daddy, please, I want Mommy." Tommy's face crumpled. The gun lowered. One by one, the children came out. Sophia carrying the 4-year-old, the 7-year-old clinging to her leg. Lena ran forward, wrapping them in blankets, carrying them to safety. Doc checked them quickly. No physical injuries this time, thank God. Tommy dropped the gun and collapsed, sobbing as officers moved in to arrest him. Later, in the hospital waiting room, Sophia sat between Bear and Lena, clutching a stuffed bear one of the members had grabbed from the nest. "You came," she whispered, "just like you promised everyone." Bear hugged her gently. "We show up, kiddo. That's what family does." Nah, if this moment touched your heart, if you believe that real heroes ride motorcycles and show up when no one else will, hit that like button and subscribe to Road Motorcycle Diaries right now. We bring you stories of courage and kindness every week that prove humanity is still worth believing in. The case made headlines. Biker Club talks armed father down, saves 3 children. Donations poured in. Guardian Watch expanded to 2 more counties. But the emotional toll was heavy. That night, several members sat around the clubhouse fire pit in silence, staring into the flames. Bear finally spoke. "We can't save them all." Reaper shook his head. "No, but we saved those 3, and we'll save the next ones. That has to be enough." Emma, now 10 and a regular fixture at the club, walked over and climbed into Bear's lap like she had 100 times before. "You okay?" she asked. He smiled wearily. "Getting there, kid." She hugged him tight. "You showed up. That's what matters." But as Guardian Watch grew stronger, a new chapter was about to begin, one that would take them far beyond their own state and place one very special girl in front of thousands. If you've ever wondered what real family looks like, would you drop everything to help a child in need? Tell us in the comments, would you do the same? Like, subscribe to Road Motorcycle Diaries, turn on notifications, and share this story, because courage is contagious. 5 years after that fateful Saturday morning when a bruised little girl walked into a diner and asked strangers to be her family, 13-year-old Emma Thompson stood backstage at the National Conference on Child Welfare in Washington, D.C., clutching a stack of note cards, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it over the murmur of 2,000 people filling the auditorium. The stage manager whispered, "You're up in 2 minutes, Miss Thompson." Emma looked down at her outfit, a simple black blouse, jeans, and the small leather vest the Road Guardians had made for her when she turned 12, with Junior Guardian embroidered on the back. Bear stood beside her, his massive hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly, for the 10th time. "We can read your speech for you." Emma shook her head. "No, I need to tell them myself." She thought back to everything that had led to this moment. Guardian Watch had exploded in growth. From one clubhouse in a small town, it had spread to 12 states, with over 40 motorcycle clubs partnering or starting their own chapters. They had served more than 4,200 children, providing emergency shelter, mentorship, court advocacy, and family reunification when safe. Over 300 abusers had been arrested with evidence the Guardians helped document and deliver. The nest had become a network of 23 safe facilities. Emma had been there every step, helping design playrooms, training new volunteers, even testifying in court when needed. Sarah, her mum, had remarried 2 years ago to a quiet mechanic from a neighboring chapter who treated them both like treasures. Emma now had a little brother, Liam, who was 3 and already obsessed with motorcycle. And Emma herself? She had grown tall and strong, top of her class, captain of the robotics team, and a black belt in karate, something the club had insisted on for every kid in the program. The lights dimmed. The moderator's voice boomed. "Our next speaker is someone who doesn't just know the statistics, she lived them. At age 9, she walked into a diner full of bikers and asked for help. What happened next? Changed child protection across America. Please welcome Emma Thompson." The auditorium erupted in applause before she even stepped out. Emma walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone down to her height, and looked out at the sea of faces. Social workers, lawmakers, judges, advocates. Many were crying already. "5 years ago," she began, her voice clear and steady, "I was scared to go home. My stepfather had hurt me so badly I could barely see out of one eye. I didn't know where to turn. But I had heard stories at school about men on motorcycles who helped people. So I walked into a diner and asked them to be my dad, just for one day." She paused, letting the words sink in. "They didn't give me one day. They gave me a lifetime." She clicked to the first slide. Statistics: 4,200 children served, 312 families safely relocated, 87% reduction in repeat abuse among program participants, 0 fatalities among children actively in Guardian Watch. "These aren't just numbers," Emma said. "These are kids who get to sleep without fear, mums who get to rebuild, dads, like the ones who became my family, who learned that real strength is protecting the vulnerable." She told stories, not hers alone, but Sophia's, who was now 15 and studying nursing because Lena had believed in her. Marcus, who had gone on to college on a scholarship funded by club rides. Tyler, who now mentored younger boys. "I used to think family was only the people you're born to," Emma continued. "But I was wrong. Family is who shows up when you're broken, who stays when it's hard, who answers when a scared kid is brave enough to ask for help." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. "We still have work to do. There are kids right now hiding bruises under long sleeves. There are parents too afraid to leave. But programs like Guardian Watch prove that when everyday people decide to show up, when bikers and teachers and social workers and neighbors stand together, we can change everything." She looked directly at Bear. sitting in the front row with Reaper, Lena, Doc and 20 other guardians who had ridden cross-country to be here. "I asked for one dad for one day," Emma said, voice cracking for the first time. "And I got hundreds. They taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's asking for help when you're terrified. And kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest force on earth." The standing ovation lasted 4 full minutes. Backstage afterward, reporters swarmed. Lawmakers wanted photos, foundations offered grants, but Emma only cared about one thing. She ran straight into Bear's arms. "You did it, kid," he whispered, holding her tight. "You saved more lives today than I ever have." She pulled back, tears in her eyes. "We did it, together." That night at a celebration dinner, the Road Guardians voted unanimously to make Guardian Watch a fully independent national non-profit, with Emma as the youngest ever board member. But the best was yet to come. In 5 more years, Emma would stand on an even bigger stage, and the little girl who once begged for one day of family would help give thousands of children a lifetime of safety. 10 years after Emma Thompson first pushed open the door of the Rusty Anchor Diner with a black eye and a desperate plea, 18-year-old Emma stood on the steps of the state capitol building, surrounded by hundreds of roaring motorcycles about to cut the ribbon on the new national headquarters of Guardian Watch International, an organization that had grown from one little girl's courage into a global force protecting over 50,000 children in 14 countries. The sun shone bright on that crisp autumn day. Motorcycles lined the street for blocks, thousands of riders from clubs across the world who had flown or ridden in for the celebration. Banners fluttered in the wind. Guardian Watch International, because every child deserves someone who shows up. Emma, now a senior in high school heading to college on a full scholarship, wore her full Road Guardians cut, the one they had given her on her 16th birthday when she became the youngest full-patched member in club history. Her long hair was braided back, and the scars from that long-ago night had faded, but the fire in her hazel eyes burned brighter than ever. Bear stood beside her, grayer now at 64, his silver beard longer, but his posture still ramrod straight. Reaper, Lena, Doc, and the original 15 from that diner morning stood in the front row, arms crossed, eyes shining with pride. The governor stepped to the microphone first. "Today we honor not just an organization, but a miracle that started with one child's bravery and one club's decision to answer. Guardian Watch has reduced child abuse recidivism by 82% in participating areas. They've facilitated over 15,000 safe family separations and reunifications. And they've done it all with volunteers, ordinary people who decided to be extraordinary." Then it was Emma's turn. She stepped forward, voice steady and strong. "10 years ago," she began, "I was 9 years old and terrified. My stepdad had hurt me so badly I could barely walk. I didn't know what else to do, so I walked into a diner full of bikers, the scariest looking people I could find, and asked them to be my dad for one day." Laughter rippled through the crowd, mixed with tears. They didn't just show up for one day, they showed up for every day after. They taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about who chooses you when you need it most. She gestured to the massive new building behind her, a state-of-the-art facility with training centers, emergency shelters, counseling rooms, and even a motorcycle workshop for kids to learn mechanics as therapy. This headquarters will train chapters in new countries. It will house kids who have nowhere else to go. It will be a place where broken things get fixed, bikes, hearts, lives. Emma clicked a remote, and a huge screen behind her lit up with photos. Children graduating high school who once hid in the nest. Mums smiling in new homes. Former abusers who had gone through the program's rehabilitation track and were now mentoring others. Statistics flashed: 347 children served, 9,214 interventions, 0 deaths from abuse among active participants. But none of this would exist without the road guardians, Emma continued, without Bear, who knelt down to my level that first morning and promised I'd never be alone again, without every rider who dropped everything to answer a call, without teachers who learned to see, social workers who partnered instead of feared, communities who decided judging appearances was less important than saving lives. She turned directly to Bear. You once told me I saved your life by giving you purpose. But Bear, you saved mine first. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. Riders revved engines in a thunderous salute. Later, at the celebration barbecue on the Capitol lawn, stories flowed like the beer. Old-timers recounted that first ride to the school. Newer members from international chapters, Australia, Germany, Brazil, shared how Guardian Watch had changed their countries too. Sophia, now 20, a nursing student, hugged Emma tight. You gave me the courage to speak up that night. Now I help save lives every day. Marcus, 21, and studying engineering, showed off photos of the bike he'd built with club mentorship. Even Tyler, now 18 and a junior member himself, stood tall beside his mum, who had become a counselor for the program. As the sun set, Emma found a quiet moment with Bear on the steps. I leave for college next year, she said softly. Pre-law. I want to change the system from inside, too. Bear nodded, eyes misty. You'll be the best lawyer they've ever seen, kid. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Will you walk me down the aisle someday, when I get married? He chuckled through tears. Try and stop me. But the day wasn't over. One final surprise waited, a vote that would cement Emma's place in the family forever, and a return to the very diner where it all began. On the exact 10-year anniversary of the morning that changed everything, the Rusty Anchor Diner was packed wall-to-wall with leather-clad men and women, the air thick with the smell of fresh coffee, bacon, and overwhelming emotion, as 50 of the original road guardians, who had answered a little girl's plea, gathered once more around the same corner booth, waiting for the one person who had started it all. The diner looked almost exactly the same. Same checkered floors, same flickering neon sign, same booths worn soft from years of use. Kelly, the waitress who had served that first plate of pancakes to a bruised 9-year-old, now had grey streaks in her hair but still wore the same warm smile. She had closed the diner to the public for the day, just for family. At precisely 6:15 a.m., the door chimed. Emma Thompson, 18 now, tall and confident, wearing her full road guardians cut over a simple white dress, pushed through the door, just like she had a decade ago. But this time, she wasn't alone. Sarah walked beside her, holding 3-year-old Liam's hand, and behind them came hundreds more, kids who had been saved by Guardian Watch, now teenagers and young adults, some with their own children. Emma paused in the doorway, taking it all in. The booth where Bear and the original 15 had sat. The counter where she had eaten those chocolate chip pancakes. The spot on the floor where she had stood on tiptoe to ask the scariest question of her life. Bear stood up slowly, his eyes wet. Reaper, Lena, Doc, Tiny, everyone from that first morning rose with him. Emma walked straight to the booth, just as she had before. But this time, instead of whispering, her voice rang clear and strong. 10 years ago, she said loud enough for everyone to hear, I stood right here and asked, please, will one of you be my dad just for today? The room was silent, except for quiet sobs. You didn't give me one day. You gave me a lifetime. You gave thousands of kids a lifetime. She pulled a small box from her pocket and turned to Bear. Ryan Bear Callahan, she said formally. You've been my dad in every way that matters for 10 years. You walked me through nightmares, taught me how to wrench, scared off bullies, held me when I cried, cheered louder than anyone at my graduations. You showed me what real strength looks like. She opened the box. Inside was a new patch, one she had designed herself, a small winged skull with the words, Dad by Choice underneath. I had this made for your cut. Because family isn't about blood, it's about who chooses you, and you chose me. Bear, big tough Bear, who had faced combat, bar fights, and armed standoffs without flinching, dropped to one knee, tears streaming down his face as Emma sewed the patch onto his vest with shaking hands. The diner exploded in cheers, hugs, backslaps. Cameras flashed as the moment was captured forever. Then came the final surprise. The entire club had voted months ago in secret. Reaper stepped forward with a large wrapped package. "Kid," he said, voice thick, "you've been junior guardian, then full patch, but today you get something else." Emma unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a brand new leather president's vest with her name on it. Not for the Road Guardians, but for Guardian Watch International. "We're making you national president," Bear said. "You started this. You grew it. You're the heart of it. It's yours now." Emma stared at the vest, speechless for the first time all day. I can't," she stammered. "You can," Lena said firmly, "and you will, because no one knows better than you what it means to need someone to show up." They slipped the vest onto her shoulders. It fit perfectly. Sarah hugged her daughter tight. "Your dad, your first dad, would be so proud," she whispered. "Both your dads are." The celebration lasted all morning. Stories, laughter, tears. Kids who had once arrived, terrified, now laughed as they sat in the booth that changed their lives. Former Guardian Watch children, now doctors, mechanics, teachers, parents, introduced their own families. Kelly brought out a massive cake shaped like a Harley with the words, "Not just for one day, forever." As the sun rose higher, Emma stood on a chair and raised a coffee mug. "To the family we choose," she toasted. "To the ones who show up, to the brave kids who ask for help, and to the ones who answer." The diner roared back, "Forever!" But the most powerful moment was yet to come. One final circle closed, one final truth spoken, back in the place where a little girl's courage had first ignited a revolution of kindness. As the morning sun poured through the windows of the rusty Anchor Diner on that 10-year anniversary, casting golden light over tear-streaked faces and leather vests, little 9-year-old Emma Thompson's trembling question from a decade ago echoed one final time in everyone's hearts. "Please, will one of you be my dad just for today?" And in that sacred space, the answer that had reshaped thousands of lives was spoken aloud, once and for all, forever. Bear stood in the center of the diner, the new Dad by Choice patch proudly sewn on his chest, his massive arms wrapped around 18-year-old Emma, as if she were still that tiny, bruised girl who had changed him forever. He cleared his throat, voice rough with emotion, and addressed the room full of family. The original 50, the hundreds who had joined since, the children who had once arrived terrified and now stood tall. 10 years ago, Bear began, a little girl with a black eye and more courage than all of us combined walked through that door and asked 15 rough-looking bikers for one day of pretending. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for pity. She asked for protection. She asked to feel safe just for a little while. He looked down at Emma, tears shining in his eyes. We said yes, and in that yes, we found something we didn't even know we were missing. Purpose, family, a reason to be better than the world expected us to be. Reaper stepped forward, his own eyes red. I was ready to ride into that school like an army that day, thought we were there to scare a monster away. But the real monster we scared was the one inside all of us, the part that looks away, that says, "Not my problem." That little girl killed that monster in every one of us. Lena, holding back sobs, added, "She taught us that kindness isn't soft. It's the toughest thing you'll ever do. Showing up when it's hard, staying when it hurts, loving kids who aren't yours like they are." One by one, others spoke. Doc, I've fixed broken bones my whole life, but that morning, a 9-year-old fixed my broken heart. Sarah, Emma's mom, holding little Liam. You gave me my daughter back. You gave us a future. You taught me that asking for help isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing a person can do. Then Emma stepped forward, now the national president of Guardian Watch International, her voice steady and strong. I asked for one dad for one day, she said, looking around the diner that had become holy ground. But you gave me hundreds. You gave me uncles and aunts, big brothers and sisters, a whole army of people who chose me when I felt unchoosable. She turned to Bear. You taught me how to change oil, how to throw a punch, how to stand tall when the world tries to make you small. But most of all, you taught me that real family isn't about who you're born to. It's about who shows up when the world gets dark, who stays when things get hard, who answers when someone is brave enough to ask. Emma raised her voice so every person in the diner and every child who had ever been saved could hear the truth. That morning, I thought I was the one who needed saving. But the truth is, I saved you too. I gave you a reason to be the heroes you always were, underneath the leather and the scars. Together, we built something bigger than any of us. 50,000 children safe, thousands of families healed, a message that's gone around the world. When a child asks for help, we show up, every single time. She smiled through tears. So, no, Bear. No, Road Guardians. No, my beautiful, impossible family. It wasn't just for one day. It was forever. Bear pulled her close, whispering so only she could hear at first, You saved my life, kid. Then he said it loud enough for everyone. No, little one, you saved all of ours. The diner erupted. Cheers, hugs, engines revving outside as hundreds of bikes saluted from the parking lot. Grown men wept openly. Children who had once hidden bruises now laughed freely. Because 10 years earlier, a little girl with a black eye had believed that bikers might have the courage to match hers. And they did. They answered, not just for one day, but forever. Outside, as the sun climbed higher, Emma stood hand in hand with Bear, watching the family they had built together ride off into the horizon. Stronger, kinder, unbreakable. Because family isn't about biology. It's about who shows up when a scared child dares to ask. And sometimes, the people you least expect are the ones who become your everything. If this story restored even a little bit of your faith in humanity, if it reminded you that kindness still wins, that courage is contagious, and that real family is chosen, then do us one favor. Would you show up for a child who needed it? Would you be the person who answers? Tell us in the comments below. Would you do the same? Hit that like button if you believe goodness still exists in unexpected places. Subscribe to Road Motorcycle Diaries and turn on notifications. We share stories like this every week to prove that humanity is worth believing in. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that they're not alone. Because one little girl asked for help, and the world got a little brighter. Thank you for being part of this family, not just for one day, forever.